Hey guys, today we're going to be discussing Bitcoin and its potential reversal pattern playing out right now. I've spent a lot of time looking at the charts and how we have pulled out of similar scenarios this bull market, and I will say, based on the technical analysis I'm going to show you, there is a good chance that early this coming week, specifically Monday or Tuesday, I suspect we could have an incredible recovery. And we will also talk about what could happen if we just continue to go lower. Because as traders, we need to consider both sides of the coin. And we will also talk about what this means for XRP and the pattern we have been following on this channel. So the three significant reversals during consolidation periods this cycle are right here, here, and now where we currently sit. Now, the first thing they all have in common is during their leg up, they left gaps to be filled. Many of you guys know that gaps in the market often tend to get filled, and these spaces on a chart emerge when the price of an asset moves with little to no trading in between. Since Bitcoin is traded 24/7, typically the gaps are referred to and analyzed are aggressive moves to the upside or downside that we don't spend much time trading within. And historically, these really like to get back tested when Bitcoin settles down and consolidates before another leg up. So back in this consolidation, which was our first major leg up to start this bull market, you can see this gap that was left during its rally. And you can see, because of how quick we shot through this price zone, when we extend this area, look how it got filled perfectly, which is actually very healthy to see, as once the market fills these zones, it has the stamp of approval to create its next leg up afterwards. Now, similarly, we reversed out of this consolidation. We saw similar price zone here that we just blew through. And you can see when we created this zone and extend it, once again, this acted as support and got filled almost to an exact T. And lastly, with this most recent leg up, we had the Trump pump, which was an incredibly aggressive move, once again leaving a zone we didn't spend much time trading within above all-time highs, which once again, as you can see, got filled perfectly in this zone. So you can see the consistency here and how you can use this technical analysis to look for support zones for entries. Now we are going to focus solely on the reversal stage of when we filled those gaps, found support towards the end, and ultimately broke out. And the first thing I want to point out is specifically the tail end section of the consolidation of each of these scenarios. You can see that when we first break down to really try to fill that gap, we are followed with a big buyback. See it here, here, and here. But more importantly is the pattern formation that starts to form out of this price action after that. After this first bounce, we see a consistently strong resistance line that begins to form on all of them, which is the top side of what turns out to be an ascending wedge. And look at the nature of how after this first bounce, we break down aggressively in all three scenarios right back beneath it. The consistency is crazy, and these moves validate support or resistance lines when you see this type of behavior when breaking below or above them. And then in all three cases, the second major drop, which is where the market really got what it ultimately wanted, which was the official gap close, that's where I created the support line to form the ascending wedge in all three scenarios as well. Now, with everything we have done here, you may have already noticed, but the craziest part about this is in the previous two cases, we broke above this gap zone we have highlighted towards the end of the wedge, and then we broke below that bottom support of the wedge very aggressively in what I would consider a capitulation stage to really fake everyone out before the breakout. And in all of these cases, in this capitulation, we back test the top side of this gap and to some degree broke back into the gap zone a bit, but we ultimately made it support in both scenarios. However, I do want to point out we have dipped a bit more into this gap zone than the previous scenarios in our current consolidation. Furthermore, there is another line you can draw in every scenario showing the trend line from the tops of the first and second relief bounce that shows this same capitulation has another zone of support that is respected in all three scenarios. And once again, I'm giving so many lessons here on technical analysis you can use for yourself, but remember that the markets follow laws of nature as well. As above, so below. For every action, there's an opposite and equal reaction, which also translates to time. And the easiest way to determine when you can expect a breakout or a breakdown during a consolidation is going to be on a longer time frame chart and taking the highest close, signifying the top of the leg up, then going back to the start of the leg up, noting the beginning of the leg, and based on the same length in time pushed to the right, you can see when that move will be expected. We can see it in this first scenario. We can see it in this second scenario. And in our current scenarios, it looks like that time frame to expect the big move is going to be within the next week. So I suspect we will have our answers on what the market holds in store for us by then. And one last thing that I want to point out is I've noticed that bearish closes on Fridays in the markets during capitulation events, that it tends to lead to a strong day the following Monday. And if you notice the previous two reversals, their major bounces back into that wedge were on Mondays. Now, based on how this has played out previously, we should want to stay in this retracement or capitulation stage for only a few days at the most, and then bounce back into that wedge. And to me, it's pretty clear based on cycle theory that if we break below this previous low, we are heading lower, most likely, which will be very bad for markets, and I will be forced to be de-risking some of my positions, which would probably align with a super negative, news announcement on tariffs for a narrative to support that. But if we break back into this wedge, we also know what's in store for us, and all of your patience during this consolidation will have been worth it as we blast off to new highs. And this tariff news will likely have been a nothing burger, just like the yen carry trade, in which case we carried to new all-time highs in the months to follow. Now, moving on to XRP, we have broken this trend line that I think invalidates the previous XRP cycle, playing out exactly the same way we have discussed in 2017. But let's not act like everything needs to align perfectly. There are two separate markets, two different time frames, years apart. It has many uncanny similarities to the past cycle structure, but I think this Bitcoin capitulation we are in now sent XRP into a capitulation in itself. Because with these trend lines, look at every time it breaks below it. It recovers incredibly strong back into the zone. So if Bitcoin jumps back into its wedge, then I suspect XRP to jump back into this. And as Bitcoin breaks out of that wedge, XRP will too. And those higher price ranges of $10 and above during Bitcoin's next leg up are still in play for XRP. And that Bitcoin breakout would carry all altcoins along with it. So to sum it up, I really think we are on make or break time for Bitcoin and the entire market itself. It's felt like that for a while, but with the analysis I've done, Bitcoin is due to make a decision on where it heads for the coming month. And I personally think that the move will end up being to the upside in the coming week or so, but ultimately time will tell. I really enjoy bringing you guys content like this, and I hope it helps you build a perspective that will serve you well in this market. If you enjoyed today's video, subscribe to stay tuned in, as this week will be a wild ride. Till then, stay smart and stay patient. Cheers.